Hello everyone, today we are going to be playing Mizuki, and with that let's get into the games. So Mizuki, like before, let's quickly go over her kit and after that go over how to play her and to play the deck that I'm using here. So once we get over the first dice rolls, we can start discussing Mizuki's kit here. Like so. So Mizuki, normal attack, 1 anemo damage, nothing new. Skill, which is the big deal, because what? This is just like a Shinjun? What? I don't remember the previous best anemo swirl character from few patches. Shin something. I'm gonna put it on the screen so you can see the proper name, but yes, anyway, the skill is the strong part because it's a 2-part anemo damage, meaning that you are basically guaranteed at least one swirl. At least technically you are guaranteed one swirl with the skill if you can play right. And the burst, nice 3 damage, surprisingly, considering the summon. This is a 3 damage and creates a summon. The summon has 3 usages as well, so the 3 burst damage is quite a lot. On top of that, the fact that what the summon does, it adds a card to your deck, which is described in this part, which either heals or deals anemo damage. And I do have to say, the summon doing anemo damage, it's only really good if you haven't done Mizuki's skill that round. Basically, when you burst, it's good to burst on a round where you do not plan to do Mizuki's skill, because the skill takes away the damage, basically the potential damage that the burst summons card. It's really complicated, I know, but basically the damage potential of the burst is somewhat lost if you plan to do an elemental skill with Mizuki on the same round as the burst. I mean, you can make it work if you are running summons. With summons, you can absolutely make skill plus burst on the same round work. Otherwise, you only really want to burst with Mizuki when Mizuki is 5 HP or below, so that you get the healing value of the burst instead of the damage. But yeah, to put it simply, the skill is the one we are gonna be concentrating on. That's the whole big deal why Mizuki is so strong. It does do anemo damage, so you can swirl immediately when you do the skill if there's an element on the opponent active character. And when you declare the end of your round, this means immediately when you press the button here, you are going to do 1 anemo damage. Notable parts of this: Mizuki's talent card gets activated by this 1 damage. Also, anemo resonance does get activated by this thing. Things like cryo resonance, to my knowledge, do not get activated by this. And for example, Shenhe's buff from the skill does not get activated by this. But what you really need to only remember is that anemo resonance and Mizuki's talent do increase the damage of this swirl reaction. If you do a swirl reaction, swirl, anemo resonance and Mizuki's talent both increase the swirl damage. But Shenhe's skill buff does not. So let's go into the game plan. So quick mention, what I did here, this is just as much swirl damage as you can get from a Mizuki deck. That was my design philosophy of this deck. I hadn't another version of this deck originally. It didn't work quite how I wanted it to work, but nonetheless, I after that learned from my mistakes, came up with this version, which is quite effective, as you are going to see in these games. Here, because I didn't really want to tune most of my cards just to get a Mizuki skill there at the start, I'm going to explain later why, well, what the actual rotation of this deck is, the optimal rotation, but we just went to Shenhe there to match the burst damage and to make it so that the opponent's Raiden would not burst onto Mizuki, because if we did Mizuki skill at the end of our round, we would be on Mizuki.
Let the wind lead.
Here we actually do not burst Shenhe, because I'm afraid that they have Anemo Resonance. They do not, so they for some reason decide to get Raiden's burst again. Maybe they didn't have any better cards in hand. But that simply means I get a nice burst of Shenhe, and here you get to see the first big swirl with the talent card and Shenhe's burst. We get nice 3 damage to the off-field characters already, and that was without Anemo Resonance. The burst nicely also takes out Raiden, so that the rest of opponent's characters still have the cryo aura for those easy swirls. The dice is not so great, and now this is starting to look a little scary here. They are going to have Farusan's burst with the talent card, and Shao with their burst is going to do a whole lot of damage. Passing of Judgment hopefully giving us some value here. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but at least we got them to stay on Farusan instead of getting Shao burst this round, so that at least the Eye of Stormy Judgment gets or runs out after this round.
Is this a nightmare?
We simply end with Shenhe, hoping to minimize the damage from the summons to Jean. But I do forget that indeed the Heart of Kafrina is going to make us draw Mizuki's card. At least this keeps Shenhe alive, so there's no fear of, Adeptus burst from Shao next round. And not to mention, we now have called in for cleanup, so killing Shao this round should be very easy. So once the dice rolls are over, they of course burst Shao if they didn't give up. But anyway, let's get into the next game. I'm going to explain the game plan there. So the game plan of this deck. You always want to start, well, actually not precisely always, but most of the time you want to start on Mizuki. Though we do not have it right now in my starting hand, nor did I have it in the previous match, but I do have 2 Liu Sus in this deck, so keep that in mind as I explain. The idea is, round 1, you do a Mizuki skill, with talent or without talent, depending on whether you get it or not. After that, you go to Shenhe. Now if you have a Liu Su round 1, that means you get, after doing Shenhe's skill, you have full energy on Shenhe.
What exactly is teamwork?
Shenhe. I don't remember the proper pronunciation there, but anyway. You do a skill on Shenhe, and if you had Liu Su, that would indeed mean you have full energy round 1 on Shenhe. Not to mention the opponent character, as you can see here, will have cryo aura from Shenhe's skill, meaning when you end your round, you get your first swirl. And also here you see Shenhe's skill buff stacks were not consumed there, but the damage was still increased by Mizuki's talent card. So yeah, this way, round 1 with this deck, that is basically the maximum damage you can do. Skill from Mizuki with talent card, Shen has elemental skill, because round 1 you never really want to play Anemo Resonance. I mean, if you wanted to maximize round 1 damage, you could play Anemo Resonance if you had it in hand. But no, I do not recommend doing that. But you see here now, they don't really want to stay on Mona. They are not going to get any real value from doing a Mona skill. All they really do is avoid some swirl damage. But if you do not have Liu Su or round 1, you just repeat the same rotation. Shenhe, not Shenhe, Mizuki skill. Here also we are running Lotus Crisp because, like I mentioned, this is the second version of the deck, and I did quickly come to realize that keeping Mizuki alive beyond round 2 requires you to have protection for her, such as Lotus Crisp. So it's the same rotation. Now you also see now the Shenhe's skill stacks were consumed. The opponent's off-field characters took 3 damage both. But yeah, same rotation. You want to do Mizuki's skill, switch to Shenhe, and well, in this case, doing a skill is not necessary really, because they went to Mona, and when we end our round, I mean, Mona already has Cryo Aura, and when we end our round, you know, the skill stacks are not going to get consumed, so there's no need to do Shenhe's skill there. Of course, the unfortunate side of this deck, you see it right here, Mizuki often gets taken out round 2. Round 1 she usually stays alive because you do the switch, but round 2 she often dies. But that's why we have Jean as the third character. Jean is not here only to give us the Anemo Resonance, but also because she has 12 HP and is an Anemo character. Quick side note, you can replace Jean with another Anemo character or an entire other element if you so feel. I'm using Jean, or more precisely an Anemo character, because I want to have access to Anemo Resonance, so I can potentially make those massive swirls with, you know, Shenhe skill buff, burst buff, Mizuki talent, Anemo Resonance combos. But Jean is a good third character because of the HP and being a Nemo. Alternative, if you want to use weapons, for example, someone like Wanderer works very well, or Farusan, or whoever you feel like it. But yeah, Jean can be replaced here to be the character of your choice. Now it doesn't really hurt that Shenhe gets taken out because there's no Dendro on Jean, and we can force switch the opponent off from Kaveh. Like so. And it also here doesn't really matter if the opponent does a skill, because now we get a Shatter. Of course, the only downside here is we don't really have any cards to play, so we are going to have to waste 2 Omni dice. Unfortunate. Shenhe Burst nicely takes out Kokomi, and now with only Kaveh left with 3 HP, there isn't that much they can do. I mean, maybe if they get like a 5-cost card coming with the Bloom from Kaveh, that could do something, but I doubt they got anything like that in their deck. Because usually people who run like 5-cost cards with Kaveh Bloom, usually they have every 5-cost card there can be. And well, it's not going to happen. They seem to have, you know, optimized the deck around Kaveh talent here. But yeah, this game is already in my hands. There isn't any more Bloom opportunities for them until the end of the round. And anyway, I do 5 damage exactly. So with that, let's get into the next game. So, in this game I want you to pay close attention to my opponent's attempts to cleanse the cryo. Because as you can already see, our opponent is running both Barbara and Xingqiu, both characters that can cleanse the cryo aura from Shenhe. Or that Shenhe applies. But due to how Mizuki's skill works, it's going to be actually Mizuki is probably the best counter to people who try to cleanse your cryo aura or any other elemental aura from your swirls.
Give up.
Here I was a little surprised they went for Ningguang's skill and not, Xingqiu's skill, because that would have actually been good for them, and also in that situation I would have simply done a normal attack with Shenhe, because ending the round with Mizuki I would have swirled the Hydro that Xingqiu would have if they did a Xingqiu's skill. But this is what I mean, you cannot really cleanse it that easily. Because if you want to cleanse with Barbara's summon, you have to end on a character that has the elemental aura you want to cleanse. But when I end my round, Mizuki is just going to swirl that elemental aura to the other characters, and now they are set up for a double freeze here. And also at this stage, I mean, going to Barbara doesn't really give them anything, they kind of have to go to Xingqiu, but unless they have a fast swap, I can just still swirl there. Like so.
Turn that frown upside down.
Of course, Xingqiu having now Aquila Favonia means he is not going to die that easily. They go to Barbara, in hopes of cleansing, probably, but once again, I just end my round and get a swirl. And you can see here, even though we do not have Shenhe's burst yet, we don't have Mizuki's talent, the damage we do is still quite great. I mean, now in this match, thanks to the fact that there is the Hydro on the opponent's side of the field, so we get those frozen reactions for a little bit of extra damage, but... And now you can see, we have called in for cleanup, we have Mystic Suit, we have Elemental Resonance, there's quite a lot of damage we can do here. The opponent using their Arcane card, not really big of a deal. In this case I actually go for Mizuki Burst, simply because Xingqiu already has Hydro Aura, and the other characters do not have any auras, and as you saw there, I could snipe Barbara with the Anemo Resonance. So in that case, using the burst was a good choice.
What exactly
it also helps keep Mizuki on high HP. And you can see from here, it doesn't matter where they end, I can just end my round and there's going to be a swirl from Mizuki. And usually at this point, when you have Shenhe's burst, at this point it is fine to sacrifice Mizuki, because now you can just use Jean, because the Shenhe burst buffs Jean's swirl reactions as well as the normal attack damage. But yeah, let's get into the next game. Now I of course had to include a match against Mizuki herself here. Not often do I get to see the actual character facing against me when I'm playing the character. In this game, there's exactly one point I want to make. You should probably switch the Arcane card. Once again, this was played in Arena of Champions, I could not change my deck mid-challenge. But But I did come to the conclusion, especially after this match you are about to see, you should change the arcane card probably to the Day of Resistance. Maybe Winds of Freedom. Nothing else in my opinion. Joyous Celebration, very situational for this deck to play as the arcane card, but you should switch well, to put it simply, I had exactly one match I can say I won because I had a Passing of Judgment. One game. And considering all the other wins I got without ever playing this arcane card, I did come to the conclusion you should just switch the arcane card. And from my experience, because of the reason I mentioned earlier, because you want to keep Mizuki alive at least until the end of round 2. Basically, you want Mizuki to be alive when you end your round on round 2, so that if you've done the proper rotation, the swirl from Mizuki's, this swirl from the skill is still going to activate and hopefully swirl an element. After that, Mizuki can go. Of course, if she has the talent card, then it becomes more useful to keep Mizuki alive.
Manifest.
But yes, you should change the arcane card. This works. When it works very well, the Passing of Judgment. But when it doesn't work, you are not in a good stage. Also here the opponent is playing, I think this is the optimized Mizuki deck, like the number wise, the damage you can do round 1 and round 2 with that deck are really, really high. Like for example, my deck only does good damage after Shenhe Burst. Before Shenhe Burst, you don't really do comparable damage to decks like the opponents. But yeah, here we actually do get the or have the Mizuki talent. Of course our opponent got it round 1, but they didn't really swirl anything, so in that regard we are on the same page. And also here you see I picked Serenity from Mystic Soup simply to keep Mizuki alive until the Shenhe Burst is out, because you can see here our opponent decides to burst Mizuki, I burst Shenhe, and now it doesn't matter which character they go to, I'm going to get a swirl from Mizuki's Dream Drifter. Of course now you can see the fact that our opponent's deck does far more damage than mine, the early rounds, is showing here. But you can also see, like, if I have a little, and I mean a little bit of luck, or let's say I had a different arcane card, this situation wouldn't be that bad. Especially after I do my first Gene skill, you can see there that if I had different arcane card or a Mystic Soup in my hand, I could probably still win here. But you can see my hand cards aren't that great. I mean, Gamblers was a nice game there, but for example, this is one reason why do not use Passing of Judgment. You can see here I played the Strategize. I was left with 7 dice, meaning 2 skills, and I had to pick whether to save the 1 die for the possible Gamblers or play Passing of Judgment. But like in my head, if I played Passing of Judgment, after the skill Arte would do it switch from Ayaka to Mizuki. If I played Gamblers, I mean, they'd probably do the same. If I pre-played Gamblers, that is. But to put it simply, my hand cards here were very bad, and the only thing that could have still threatened the opponent was the fact that if I had, for example, Day of Resistance right here, you can see one swirl from Gene skill right here would take out the whole opponent team, but they play Mystic Soup, get Fury, so there is nothing I can do. But yeah, let's get into the next game. Now the last game for today is the Dragon Whale Chaska deck. Very popular meta deck these days. A really hard matchup if they get bullets discarded with the dragon. And only if they get the bullets. If they do not get any bullets, this matchup is actually heavily in my favor, because we are doing large AoE damage, meaning that the whale is not safe.
I will do as you command.
Here, the reason why I did not do a Mizuki skill is, one, I didn't want to spend both of my woven die. I mean, if you look here, we had 7 dice when we played the strategize there. I would have played both of these because it's better than the tune cards to get Mizuki skill. Then I would have switched. That would have been 4 dice out of the 9 if we count playing these. So 4 we would have still have 5 dice. To put it simply, I decided to gamble on the fact that they will not get bullets for the dragon, because in this matchup I want to keep Mizuki alive, because I want to have 2 characters, because the dragon does single target damage mostly, or at the start of the game. The burst is the only AoE, well, and if they get bullets discarded with the skill, then it's an AoE. But to put it simply, I decided to count on the fact that they will not get a bullet discard with this skill. And in this game I absolutely get lucky with the fact that they will not have a bullet discard here, meaning they go for a burst, and we can see here no bullets, so there was no fear of losing Shenhe early, meaning we get Shenhe burst. And now my opponent is in a bit of trouble. It's actually in this stage I'm very surprised they actually do a skill with the dragon instead of switching to Chaska, because they can absolutely see I'm going to swirl. Like, I don't really understand why would you go for a skill there, because this is going to happen. I don't really understand that part. Also here, one reason why Gene is actually very good in this deck, you can see the opponent's character does not have an cryo aura at the moment, and Mizuki's Stream Drifter activates before our summon. But if we simply do a Gene skill here, well, I seem to be misremembering what I do, but I could have done a Gene skill, forced switch them to Chaska, Mizuki's Stream Drifter would have swirled the cryo on Chaska and done a lot of damage. The reason I did not do that is probably because while playing this game I was simply so not locked in to the fact of maximizing damage that I forgot to simply do it. At least the good side is that this way the Shenhe's burst will still take out the dragon, so we are 1-1 with the killed characters with our opponent. Of course, like I mentioned, doing a Gene skill would have been the better choice there overall, because we would have done so much more damage to the whale, which is the important character to the opponent. And there would have still been Cryo Aura on all of the opponent's characters. Now we see here that the opponent only has 2 cards left. The likelihood of having more Pyro bullets is very small here. So, after, you know, the obligatory respin your dice, I decide to play the Lotus Crisp on the Mizuki, because once again we do have the burst now, and I kind of want to burst here. After all, it is 3 damage comparable to Jean's skill, which is also 3 damage. And you see here the Lotus Crisp allowing Mizuki to stay alive, so we can use the burst.
Cast your worries to the wind.
Now of course the Bow Princess does get a little wasted. That was simply because there was the chance of a Pyro bullet. But now we draw there the card that Mizuki's burst creates. They get a nice 6 HP still there. Little scary. Also there you saw Mizuki's talent card increase the damage of Shenhe's burst. So it did 3 damage instead of the usual 2. And now Mizuki having 5 HP, the whale cannot one-shot it, meaning that we can get still a nice swirl off at least once. Of course now it would be better for me to have the Bow Princess in hand, but I do not. It is unfortunate indeed. But the opponent does not have that much HP left. Once again, because there's a possibility to keep Mizuki alive, we want to keep her alive. I was also looking for cards like Fury and Providence there.
Time to relax.
But the healing works just fine, because now Jean still does not have any elemental auras, meaning that the whale summon will not get any reactions that would threaten Mizuki's health. And here actually our opponent, we played quite nicely. You can see Mizuki's talent still has activations left. We force switch them to Chaska, so that when we end our round, Mizuki's talent takes the swirl reaction and kills whale.
Darkness closing.
And well, at this stage the only thing that could end the game is them getting or having bullets. Bullets are the only thing. If Kusawa discards bullets and they have bullets in hand that they can play, so that when they can end their round with Dark Shadow, you know, instantly taking out Jin, but the likelihood of that happening is very small. It is possible, but so very much unlikely. And you can see that they discard, where Kusawa discarded a 2-cost card, so there are no bullets in their hand. Now there probably is bullets in the hand, but it is too late now. Jean will finish the game, and with that we get the end of today's video, and I see you all next time.